Welcome back, or welcome to Recovering Out Loud, the podcast where we get real about mental health and addiction recovery. Today's guest is Natalia Fomicenko, an ICF certified career and confidence coach based in London, England, and the co-founder of La Visionnaire, a thriving community for ambitious international women. Before becoming a coach, Natalia built a powerhouse resume in consulting, earned her MBA from London Business School and Columbia University, and held leadership roles in fast-growing tech companies. But behind the scenes, she was silently struggling with an eating disorder that forced her to rethink everything she knew about success and self-worth. Now in recovery, Natalia helps high-achieving women redefine confidence and build lives on their own terms. In this episode, we explore the hidden layers of food addiction, body dysmorphia, and the parallels with substance use. We discuss how control and shame fuel disordered eating and sobriety, body image struggles that continue even after quitting substances, learning to reparent your inner critic, what true recovery feels like, and how to reclaim it. If you've ever felt like you've swapped addictions or you're silently battling a toxic relationship with your body and food, this one's for you. Please follow and subscribe to support the channel. We appreciate you. Enjoy the show. Hello, Natalia. How are you doing today?
Hello, Anthony. I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for taking the time. You're calling in from the UK. And
Correct.
yeah, I really appreciate it. We had a really good conversation before this, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today. You know, we talked about a lot of, and we're going to talk about a lot of the parallels with, food addiction and eating disorders and addiction in general, right? So I want to get right into it. But how do you think, do you want to describe, actually, let's do this. Do you want to describe a little bit about, your story, how you came into this field and how you help other people get through this as well?
Yes, sure. So addiction topic is close to my heart, but it's not the usual addiction. It is an eating disorder. So I used to have an eating disorder for 7 years. There are multiple eating disorders on the market. I had a binge eating. I had a binge eating disorder, which is basically consuming a lot of food when you feel down and when you have self-deprecating thoughts. It was very similar to your usual chemical addiction or alcohol addiction, in a sense that it's the eternal circles of dissatisfaction, looking for some pleasure in your life, going into a binge with food, in my case, and then feeling distracted during the binge, but then right after feeling the immense amount of guilt and not liking your life at all. Promising yourself that you will stop tomorrow, and before tomorrow you're going to just do twice, 3 times, 10 times more food consumption than usual, because tomorrow you're stopping, and then tomorrow you feel so bad about yourself when you wake up that you just repeat the cycle. And I lived this life, and I didn't tell anyone that I had this. Only my close people knew. But I think it's important to bring awareness about this topic, because in the high achiever world that I live in, which is your normal prestigious companies, good CVs, making it in your career, people sometimes think that it's easy, everybody is capable, and everybody is capable. But sometimes people are battling things like this when nobody knows, and they think that it's a weakness to admit to things. And I thought that I shouldn't admit to things, and I would never admit it if I wasn't out of it, to be honest. But I think now what's important to me with this conversation is to show people that problems exist. It's not just a facade of success, and there is a way out. It's not a very straightforward way. It's not a magic pill overnight, but there is a way out, and I think it's important to know.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's kind of funny. You know, when I started this podcast, I knew I was going to start learning. That was one of my goals, was to start learning about other mental health addictions, you know, the whole world of really mental health and the different things that people battle with. Until, you know, I hadn't noticed until I kind of started talking to you and met you. I always knew that I had an unhealthy relationship with food at one point. Today, I can say that, you know, I don't count my calories. I don't obsess over my body image as much as I used to. And I hadn't realized until I talked to you that, yeah, I went through a phase in sobriety, you know, being clean and sober from drugs and alcohol, where I was absolutely obsessed with the way I looked. And it wasn't until therapy as well that I realized, you know, every morning I woke up, the first thing I would do was look in the mirror at my body and start these words of like, oh, you ate too much last night. Oh, you're swollen. You're fat. And it was like, it's like this unconscious conversation I was having with myself every day. And I was starting off every day like that. And, you know, it was really destructive, you know, because exactly like you said, I would start counting my calories and say, you know, today I'm going to do better, and no, I can't go out. And it would start affecting my social life. And, you know, I wouldn't go to restaurants and places because I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to control my eating and my, you know, my calorie intake. Or I would go to the gym or go for, you know, 20-mile runs and kind of punish myself that way.
Yeah.
You know?
I understand you so much. I used to work in management consulting, and I worked in Saudi Arabia on projects. So I flew to Saudi. I would fly to Saudi from Dubai, where I was based, and I worked the entire day, and there would be not much pleasure in my life. And I would seek for pleasure. And so I would come back to my hotel room where I was staying, and the mini bar was usually paid for by the company. And so I would eat the entire mini bar. And I still remember that it's 2 boxes of nuts. And I would always start with cashews. Yeah. Because it's like healthy, you know, like it's just a little bit. And then you get to the, you know, half of the box. And then you're like, okay, I'm half through. So let me just finish it. And then, oh my God, I've just finished the box. So now nothing really matters. So let me get Toblerone, let me get chips, let me get everything. And so after that, I would go to the hotel gym. It would be about 11:30 or midnight. And keep in mind that I was working, you know, way more than 8 hours per day. And I was supposed to wake up fresh next morning, very early. And I would run there 10K, you know, almost dying just because I ate that mini bar. It was terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot of parallels between our stories. And, you know, I was always told by somebody in recovery that, you know, it's the same shit, different shovel. And I always love that, because it doesn't matter what I use externally. I'm the exact same as the food addict. I'm the exact same as the gambling addict. I'm the exact same as the heroin addict. You know, just because I didn't get into heroin yet doesn't mean that I'm any different. You know, it's using external things to change my inside, right? Full stop, end of story. So, I think there's a lot of parallels. Yeah.
And that's precisely the reason for addiction, because we are using the external tools to change the inside, because the belief is that we have to change something inside, because the underlying belief is that as we are right now is not enough. We need to be better. Yeah. And so this belief, this very thought, conscious or unconscious, produces these feelings of dissatisfaction with ourselves, with, you know, annoyance with our life. And that feelings, you know, require action to release this emotional pressure. And so we eat or drink or do drugs or whatever. And then we have the result, which is, again, self-deprecation and, you know, this hollow, you know, hole of regret. And the solution is to change the thought. So because it all started with the thought. And when we think of ourselves as, you know, we are addicts, or, you know, we are incapable, or we are not enough, whatever resonates with you most, it means that we are only focusing on what's wrong with us. And we do not even give ourselves a chance to notice what's good with us. And normally, in my experience, people who have addictive behaviors, they are very interesting, creative, emotional, sensitive, deep, thoughtful people. And because their moods and their outlooks and perspectives and open-mindedness is sometimes so high, that results in them being more anxious about what's going on, and what's going on in them. And so when we those people, when we don't notice these good things about us and we only focus on the bad things, we will always keep having the repeat cycles.
Yeah, the
The
cycle.
only yeah
Yeah, it's this. You remind me of this idea of being grateful, right? Gratitude. It's pretty damn hard to be grateful when you're noticing all the bad things in life, and especially about yourself. I really, I truly realize that this is a difficult conversation to have with somebody, where it's like, hey, I have this really unhealthy relationship with food, and I'm not happy about it. How did you sort of get to that place of recognizing, like, what led you to recognize that there was a problem, and then how did you bridge the gap between reaching out for help?
Yes, that's the most important question. I'm a coach, and that was not by chance. I became a coach as a result of my own searchings of how to tame my mind, so that it's not that my mind is my master, but I'm sort of the master of my mind. And it took me years. But coaching work as a coachee and then later as a professional coach helps me understand how mind works and how I can change these thoughts. Because remember, everything starts with a thought, because thought leads to feeling, feeling leads to action, action leads to result. And if we are not happy with the result, which is relapse, for instance, then we need to change the thought. But again, of course, it's not that easy to start thinking all the good things about ourselves straight away. So working on your thoughts starts with recognizing that we are often thinking very disempowering thoughts, and asking yourself, okay, but if we are always criticizing, if there is this inner critic voice that is always dominant in our head, I'm sorry, but where is our advocate? Like, I'm sorry, why do we only have critic? So you start basically almost objectively approaching to the voices of your head in your head to understand who is speaking. And it's a process, it takes time. So once you build this awareness and you realize, okay, this is my critic speaking, this is my critic speaking, this is my critic speaking, and you don't notice the advocate, then you start asking yourself, okay, how can I bring the advocate voice? And then you start noticing other voices. I have multiple voices in my head, and by the way, it's normal. Like, I have a diva voice. She needs to be the best, and if she is for some reason not the best, critic comes in and starts criticizing. And there's like multiple. There's a child voice in my head of like, oh, I'm afraid. What do I do? So there are multitude of voices, and so the first step is awareness of who is speaking. Now, the second step is finding that CEO voice in your head, because there are so many voices, but then somebody needs to manage them. So the idea is that you become the leader in your own head. So you think of yourself as a company, and you have to start leading that company well. You have to step up. So now you are faced with the question, okay, and who is the leader? How can I, talk to all those voices to find out what's their point, what's important to them, what do they want, and how do I actually make the decision, instead of having the chaos of whoever is speaking, and doing whatever, anarchy, so to say.
Yeah.
So you have to step up as a CEO in your head. And for that, you have to kind of grow up a little bit, because in my case, I've noticed I spend a lot of time in my child mode. It's like, oh, I don't like this, I don't like that, this is bad. Oh, like, and this is, it's not like we have to eliminate any voice. Child is great when you are experiencing something new, when you are enjoying the moment, when you're like allowing yourself to do something fun, that's where your child steps in. But then as a CEO, you need to understand when and where each voice is needed and organize them. And so the second step is to step up as a CEO and know which voice to listen to in which situation. And once you master that, then you realize that, okay, now I have full visibility of what's going on in my head, and now I can choose. So there is this choice that comes up, and now I can choose. Okay, if I keep thinking that, then it's likely to lead me in this hole, and I'm likely to binge. And do I want that? And when you're not ready yet for this conversation with yourself, then the child would step up and ask, oh no, like I don't like these rules, whatever, I'll binge.
Yeah.
That's what happened to me for so many
Yeah.
years. But once you're ready, once you really nurture this CEO voice in your head, then you will start feeling this choice and being empowered by this choice.
Yeah, I love that analogy. I've never heard that before. Thank you for that. That's great. It's like a company in there, and yeah, there is a CEO at the end of the day that can come in and kind of override and say, hey, little guy or girl, you're not serving us right now. This is not serving me, right? And I find that especially true in social situations too, where somebody does something to me, or somebody doesn't drive the way I want them to drive, or somebody doesn't agree with my ideas. And this kind of inner ego child, if you will, comes out and is like, no, I'm right, you're wrong. And I always say this, but my biggest problem today is I'm right. That's my biggest problem is I'm right. My way is the right way. You're wrong. I'm going to do it this way. And that kept me sick for so long, right? This recovery thing is too hard. I don't deserve this, right? All these false beliefs and negative thoughts about myself.
Yeah. It's out of balance, right? If you're punishing yourself too much, you need to compensate it by thinking in some points of your life, like, I'm the best, I'm right, I'm the coolest here. But then you realize that, well, you're not really the best, because there's not such a notion. And so you have to
Yeah.
punish yourself. So it's always like being on those extremes that is not helpful to you first and foremost.
Yeah.
Or to me. I've been there, so I really can relate.
I agree. So this comes up in the workplace, which is where you kind of focus most of your time. What does this kind of look like when a person in a corporate world or a person in, a business world kind of comes to you, and what does that look like?
Comes to me, well, you mean as a coach?
Yeah.
Yes. So I do not work specifically with eating disorders, I have to say. What I work with is getting fulfillment out of your career. And sometimes it means overcoming an eating disorder, because usually an eating disorder is a consequence either of your mindset or of some deep dissatisfaction with your life. And in my world, a big part of life of people I work with is career. So if you're dissatisfied with your career, even if it looks great on paper, but then there's this inner voice telling you, look, I'm not really realizing my potential, or I can do more, or whatever it is, then it becomes a constant source of pressure. And sometimes people escape into drinking or eating or whatever it is. And so I work to help people get clarity on their career, on what they actually like doing, what they actually want doing, and give them confidence and right mindset tools to be able to do the change and to battle these inner voices that we all have. And again, the point is not to eliminate them, but to understand them. Because if they're there, then they are serving you. They have certain purpose. The critic has a purpose to basically risk manage. If we are still in this metaphor of a board meeting, so to say, where there is a CEO, the critic can be the director of risk management, And so when he's given too much power, he starts criticizing everything because by nature of his job, he needs to manage all the risks. And then, I don't know, who else? Your child could be, I don't know, like someone who, I mean, you can think about the analogy of the boardroom. Maybe it's a strategy director who is great with vision and being excited about things, but
Yeah, like new ideas and creative
exactly,
adventures. Yeah.
exactly. So you see, you have to understand those voices. You have to understand what, how they're helping you, and find a way to negotiate with all of them so that they all work in harmony rather than in, anarchistic mode.
Yeah, yeah, driving the bus forward. It reminds me, so I was a manager for a long time where I had a team of people under me, and there was guys, my company was basically, we were, KPI, one of our highest KPIs was sales. We had to drive sales, drive leads for the sales team. And I would have, guys on my team that were not necessarily good at sales, but they had strengths in other areas, like customer satisfaction, And so I love what you're saying about, this kind of, everybody has a role, the child or the critic doesn't need to take a back seat and quiet himself or herself. They have a role on the team. And so it was my job as a manager or CEO, if you will, like in this scenario that we're talking about, where I just had to find a role for that said person, So to me, yeah, it's about finding the strengths in the critic or the child or, other members of the team and applying them so that we can, at the end of the day, we want the bus moving forward, right?
Exactly.
That's the goal,
Yeah. That reminds me of the positive psychology concept in which people are encouraged to look into their strengths and to lean into their strengths more than to, development of weaknesses. Because oftentimes, especially in corporate culture, what they tell us is that these are your development objectives, and if you don't get better, then we'll fire you, essentially. And so sometimes it's counterproductive because the person would be spending their time A, being anxious about this all, and B, trying to improve the things that they are not going to be the best at anyways.
Right.
And they don't have to, because they have other strengths that if they leaned into their strengths, that they would be really indispensable for organization. So it's not to say, again, there is no like very extreme views on that. It's not to say that they should completely ignore their development objectives and let's say if you're really a jerk to people, you have to keep being a jerk.
Yeah,
it's not about that. It's about still prioritizing your strengths and making sure that you're basically living out of your potential rather than just trying to, cut the loose ends.
How does somebody know if they're satisfied with their career or not? Like what kind of things can they start doing or start thinking about? Because this hits home for me, especially in the last year where I wasn't getting, I'm not getting a fulfillment out of my career path. And I've done some inner work on it. I've started to realize that I've basically just been following my father's path in the professional world, which is fine. It's treated me well, but ultimately I'm not fulfilled. Right. So what's something that someone can do?
Mm-hmm. Well, so the question is what somebody can do, not how somebody can know, because it sounds like you already know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, either way, like some people don't even know that so maybe it's a two-part process.
Yeah. Well, it all starts with this voice inside you telling you, well, maybe, maybe it's not it, or is that it? Is that the path? Is it where I was supposed to be? Is it where my 5 or 10-year-old self would be really excited about me being at my current age? So it starts usually with this thoughts in your head, and if you don't have them, great. I mean, you don't have to question everything. If you're
Right.
happy, great. But if you started having these thoughts, then I can tell you they're not going to go away. So you can, a lot of people are afraid to give them space because they think, oh my God, if I start entertaining those thoughts, I have to change so much. I worked so hard to achieve
Yeah.
this all. And now am I supposed to start from scratch and, all these things? But the thing is that it's not going to go away. And it's not something to attack you or damage your life. If these thoughts appear, it means that there is an opportunity for you to live a better life, to live out of even more empowered version of yourself if you are ready to face it. And so people face it at different times, but when you are ready to face it, then the first step is to understand who you have become as a result of your past experiences. I work a lot with people who are international, who change lots of countries, cultures, companies' roles. And so those are very adaptive people. And they really learn how to adapt to these changing environments. However, what often happens is that they kind of lose the feeling of who they are in the process. They no longer understand what's theirs and what's not, what they like or what they're expected to like. And so the first step that I do normally when I work with people is to help them reconnect with themselves. So answer the questions, what's really important to me? How do I understand that that's important to me? What's the difference between something that I think that's important and I feel that it's actually important? What is my purpose? Why am I waking up in the morning? So things like that. So that's the first step. And then once you realize, okay, this is who I am, and that's like it doesn't matter whether it's enough or not enough. What's important is that that's how it is, right? Once you have this baseline, then you can think, okay, who do I want to become? So you take a timeline and you start, basically you unleash your inner dreamer or inner child and you start thinking, okay, who do I want to be? And some people actually think that in order to be someone, you first need to have something or do something in order to be someone. Let's say if I want to be rich, I need to have, I don't know, properties or yachts. But it's actually the other way around. If you want to have properties or yachts, you have to be rich in your mind first, even before it's sort of materialized, because it's a part of the mindset. So this is the work that brings you to think, okay, if I want to become this different version of myself, how does this different version of myself think about things? And it must be different, because if you keep doing what you've always been doing, you would be getting the same results that you've always been getting. And so that is the second part of the work. Okay, who do I want to become? And then the third part of the work is mindset. It's empowering. From point A to point B, how do I get there? What inner challenges do I need to overcome? How do I work with my inner critic or inner perfectionist? Or if I tend to procrastinate, what's driving it? And et cetera, et cetera. And those things are different for different people. So it's a process. That's why it's always easier to do it with an external person like a coach, because it helps you expand your mind, because it helps you get out of your usual thinking patterns. It helps you to see what's really going on. It acts like a mirror, as opposed to when you're just thinking about it yourself and you have lots of blind spots. We all do. I also have coaches because, I realize that I have blind spots as we all do. And so it's important to expand your thinking in order to really move forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's this idea of like altering your perception, getting another perspective on your situation, because I'm one perspective. the minute I start incorporating somebody else into the process, that's now two perspectives, you know, and the more people I kind of bounce things off of, that's more perspectives. And then I can kind of bring all those ideas of responses together and make an informed decision that way, you know.
True.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I just wanted to say that having perspectives, of course, is very, very beneficial. But specifically when you work with a coach is not supposed to tell you what to do. A coach is supposed to ask you the questions that you wouldn't ask yourself otherwise, so that certain answers come out for you that you haven't thought about before. Because essentially the role of a coach is to empower you to solve your own problems, not to solve the problems for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I that's a great point. And you know, that's like, I was going to ask the question, but that you pretty much nailed it. It's like, what does a good coach look like? You know, and a good coach to me has to wear multiple hats. They have to be a cheerleader. They have to be, you know, hard sometimes and tell you the hard truth. But at the end of the day, ultimately, it's not them, you know, go here, take left, make a footstep here. It's not that, because you and I both know someone, you know, especially somebody that deals with control issues and addiction, we don't respond well to to this kind of dictator behavior where it's like, I don't take direction well, you know, I take suggestions better and I take questions a lot better. Well, why are you thinking this way? Why don't you want to go to this party later? And, you know, my partner does a great job of that. I always say this, but you know, she does a great job of kind of helping me make an informed decision rather than telling me what to do. And I think that challenges me in a way that helps me to grow. You know?
Yeah. And that's back to the point of having the CEO in your head. If there is someone who is always playing the CEO and decides what to do, then you will never grow your own CEO in your head. Right?
Yeah. What does recovery look like to you today, Natalia?
Recovery. I always thought that when I will stop having the binging episodes, I would be like in bliss all the time.
Same. Yeah. Yeah.
And to be honest, I mean, if I think about how bad it all was, I am in bliss, you know. But the thing is that it's normal life. It's a daily work on your thoughts. So it's a right food intake for me. I still have thoughts when I approach the point in my meal when I feel like I'm full, but I still have appetite, or it's tasty, and you know, it's almost like a critical, like little signalization starts coming off, like, look, you are at the, you know, critical point of being full. So if before, when I was more in a child mode, I was like, whatever, I don't want rules, I do, it's my life, I do whatever I want, so I'll just keep eating whatever happens. Now I understand that this voice is telling me that I'm approaching my limit. If I keep doing that, I am likely to be unhappy with myself. Do I want that? Not really. And so I stop. And as you've done it multiple times, it might feel uncomfortable for 5 seconds, but then it's bearable. So you realize that you can handle that. You realize that this minor discomfort, you're okay to handle for the sake of not having a bigger discomfort if you are full. And then also a very, very important point that I realize, even though, you know, I've been a woman for over 30 years of my life, I actually just recently discovered how different my natural body needs depending on the stage of the cycle. So you know, in the second stage of the cycle, for instance, my appetite increases and I want to have more like fatty foods, more like something oily and stuff like that. And my appetite increases. What I didn't know is that that's normal. And that metabolic rate also increases. And so when I had my episodes, I used to think, oh my God, I always want to eat. And it was very difficult to battle. And instead of giving my body what it needs, as in, healthy fats, I would be giving it junk food because I would be punishing myself. And so in those periods, I was the most unstable back in the years when I had episodes. Now I know that, yes, I'm eating more when I'm in the second stage of my cycle, but surprisingly, in the first stage of my cycle, my appetite drops. And I am just amazed at how body self-regulates. So I think it's just literally A, managing your thoughts, B, being in the moment and not stepping into past remuneration of like, oh, like, I had this eating disorder in the past, what would prevent me to have it in the future? Or not stepping too much in the future. It's like, oh, maybe it's uncomfortable now, but if I keep doing that, maybe it will be even more comfortable. And then, so you don't think about the future, you focus on the moment. And often you realize that discomfort is just a very short lived. So being in the moment, managing your thoughts, and yeah, and basically trying to be adult in every area of my life, which takes focus out of the body thing and food thing, and trains you to don't expect perfection, not expect perfection from yourself. Notice your strengths and enjoy what you can do, and basically be okay with the fact that you have, both sides of the coin. You have certain limitations and you have certain strengths, and as long as you're okay with that, then you don't have to punish yourself, because the thing is that everybody does. It's a human nature. So I think it just boils down to accepting the human nature in yourself and learning how to live with that.
Yeah, I agree. There's so many parallels between, substance use disorder and this food addiction. That is pretty prevalent. And I think it's prevalent in a lot of places. Body dysmorphia comes into it. And I mentioned at the beginning that I struggled with body dysmorphia. I still do to some degree, but I'm a lot better at it now. I'm a lot better at managing those thoughts and asking myself questions, what is this about? And I've ultimately found that, there's this hole inside of me that is not enough, like we said, and I'm trying to fill it with whatever outside things, come into play. Are there, what are some of the common themes that you see with successful people in recovery?
Well, they stop chasing achievement and they start enjoying the process.
I love that.
When you chase achievement all the time, you just live in your to-do list. You're always unhappy and you miss life, essentially. All the thoughts that you're not enough, all those circles, you miss the moment because you're there, you're not here. So once you start enjoying the process, asking yourself how it feels right now in this very moment, what am I doing if it doesn't feel well? Like, why am I doing that?
Right.
And then you start notice that life is so much more than achievement or feeling that void. Life already is, what is, and it's wonderful. I mean, I'm getting a little bit esoteric here, but that's essentially, kind of spiritual element to that.
Yeah, that maybe there's another way to do things. Maybe my way is not the only way. That's kind of the spiritual side for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it reminds me of this kind of notion where once I have this, I'll be happy. Once I have one car, my favorite car, I'll be happy. Now I have the car. It's like, once I have the boat, I'll be happy. And it never ends, right? It's this it's kind of like this ladder analogy that I heard one time, where it's like there's an empty bag on the top of the ladder, and every CEO climbs that ladder, gets to the bag, and finds out that it's empty. There's nothing in the bag.
Yeah.
And he, the next guy, the rookie CEO, the guy that's just coming up, he's talking to the veteran, the guy that's been there before. And the veteran is telling him, hey, there's nothing in the bag, man. Don't, it's not worth it. And like 10 out of 10 times, that young guy or girl needs to go and will do it anyways, despite all the warnings. Will need to go climb the ladder and find out for him or herself that there's nothing in the bag. There's nothing on the other side, right?
Yeah, I love this analogy. I feel like when you have these thoughts, when I do that, that will make me happy. It's an intellectual thought, right? It has nothing with the feeling. You think that it will make you happy. But how does it feel to be happy? Like, can you actually imagine that you feel happy right now? Can you imagine? Let's do an exercise.
Yeah. I think it's changed a lot. It's funny because my brain starts to automatically, and this is because I'm working a recovery program, but my brain starts to go for all the little things. I woke up this morning. I have coffee. I have a bed to sleep in. I have a beautiful partner. I have family. I was out for dinner last night with one of my uncles who we've become closer because as a result of my relapse and addiction. He's supporting me more, and yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I'm not thinking about all the stuff that I have or the computer or the job or anything like that. My mind immediately goes to, I think back to all the moments if you were to ask me, remember a moment you were last happy, I think about places. I think about the cottage that we have that is on the lake, and I think about the vacations that I've been on in Europe. That's
so
happy.
You think a lot. You try to recall images
Absolutely.
or
Yes.
events.
Yes.
But what if you try to focus on the body sensations?
Yeah.
Like if you felt very, very happy right now for whatever reason, what would you feel in your body? How would you know that you're happy?
My first answer to that is excited. And when I say excited, it's hard for me to put into words. It's almost like an anxious feeling. Yeah. Yeah. There's
So
this anxiety. Yeah.
I love that because the thing is that physiological response to anxiety or excitement is the same. Is this feeling of like, for me, it's this feeling in the pit of my stomach, which honestly, when I reframe it as excitement, it's bearable, but I don't like feeling it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, because when you only associate with happiness this almost anxiety, then you almost don't want to feel happy in the moment, and you feel like, oh, when I have this or that, then I will be happy. But you have to learn to feel that happiness now, because if you don't learn how to feel it through sensations now, you won't be able to feel it regardless of the events that are going to happen in your life.
That's amazing. I've never been told that or thought about that, But you nailed it on the head. Like I recall imagery when I have thoughts of triggers, and I haven't had one in a bit now, but when I have triggered thoughts of, I miss the way that it's always like a picture in my head of that first hour of the party where I was having fun, and not even an hour, I would say like half an hour. It's like that first little tiny window where I was enjoying the drugs and alcohol. And then the 99% of the night was just hell, it was absolute hell. But my brain will grab onto that one memory, that quick, enjoyment feeling. And it's not a body sensation at all. It's like this, I just picture the surrounding area of when I was happy. So what does happiness feel like to you? You mentioned a pit in your stomach, but what Can you describe that
No,
more?
so pit in my stomach is not happiness, that's excitement. And I don't like to associate it with happiness for that same reason, because it is too similar to anxiety. I guess my happiness is like I have to, I have to do an exhale to feel it in my body. That means that I'm not contracting my body anywhere. Like it's just relaxed everywhere. Like all goes freely. And I am fully focusing on my sensations rather than any thoughts, because thoughts often give me anxiety. And so if I am able to switch off the thoughts, because in the end of the day, I'm thinking the thoughts. So, I can do that. And you can do it with practice in meditation or just sitting with that. You realize that, this feeling, I don't know if anybody here ever done ecstasy, when you're on, yeah, that was Mena's joke. When you're on this wave of like, it's coming up, your thoughts just leave your head and you feel this relaxation, your breath goes, flows freely, you smile, you are not distracted by anxious thoughts, you
Fully
feel
present.
warmth, you're fully present. Exactly. So that's the happiness, but you don't need ecstasy to feel that. And so focusing, like switching back, like if you feel anxious or if you feel any self-deprecating thoughts, that's the sign that you're too much in your thoughts. Your mind is writing you. So that's your sign to switch into the body. And for me, what works is starting to breathe like slowly, like noticing any contraction and just releasing it. And that puts me in a state of relaxation. And like, I used to be afraid of public speaking, and podcasting is public speaking for me. But right now I don't have any anxiety whatsoever, because I just allow my breath to flow. So being in the present moment and being in your body, that's the only way out.
Yeah. And that takes practice, right? It's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. A lot like this recovery program that I work, I was always taught and told that it's simple, not easy. And we like to overcomplicate it. And sometimes it's just meditating and sitting with your thoughts. But I find that meditation gets easier after I practice it more. And it doesn't have to be a 20-minute, on a pillow every morning. I was taught that, it can start with 3 breaths in the morning. But to your point, I'm focusing on my breaths, not what I have to do today.
Exactly. Exactly. And at least that was the case with me when I was trying to focus on my breath. I was like, okay, I'm focusing on my breath now. How long do I need to do it? It's annoying. Like I could have done so many other things with that. So that's your mind speaking. Try to find something that feels nice in the body. Like for me, actually, one of the things that helps me was stretching. Like when you stretch, you naturally want to breathe deeply because you just want to release. Also, what helps me personally is talking to yourself during that stretching moment. It's like, it's safe, like this safety feeling. Because essentially, if we are not flexible, that means that our body is too contracted. And so in order to make it more flexible, you need to release this contraction. You need to breathe into the stretch. You need to tell yourself that it's safe to stretch. And this phrase, I am safe, does wonders in stretching and beyond.
It's funny you bring that up because my wife stretches every morning and she loves it. And she's been trying to get me to do it for a while now. And I just haven't gotten into it. So maybe I'll revisit that today. I appreciate that. Okay, Natalia, if you had, there's a woman or a man or person out there that's struggling with the relationship with food, or they have some kind of eating disorder, or they're using food to ultimately feel some sort of way. What do you say to that person right now?
I would say that you're not alone, and this is your body's way to show you that a change is needed for you to step into a more empowered version of yourself. And that's just your path. Everybody has something to overcome, some sort of crisis in order to step up, and that's your opportunity. And it's time, and if you're ready, then you can choose to do something about it. And if it's not now, it's okay. But you can always make this choice. And this present moment is basically, all you have. And if you don't make it now, again, that's fine. You can always make it later. But if you make it, then be ready to experience a different part of life. And if you need support, you can find the support that works for you. If you feel like you would like to speak to me, I'm happy to. But I'm really excited for what life is going to have for you, to be honest.
That's beautiful. One thing that recovery has given me, plain and simple, everyday, full stop, is freedom, right? This freedom that I have. I can go anywhere I want. I can do anything I want if I'm willing to pay the consequences. I'm not obsessed with the only answer is to use or drink today. And that in and of itself is a beautiful thing,
Yeah.
Yeah. Where can people find you, Natalia?
People can find me on LinkedIn. It's Natalia Fomicenko. And Instagram, it's Nati_Fomicenko. Or my email, which is natalia@nataliafomicenko.com.
Beautiful. And I'll link that all in the show notes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Natalia. That was a great conversation. I had a great time. I learned a lot today. I'm amazed with what I keep learning while I'm doing this. So I appreciate you. I appreciate the work that you do, you and your team. And it was a great conversation. Until next time, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Anthony. And thank you for bringing awareness about such a sensitive topic. I really, really appreciate what you're doing.
For listening, please help us grow the channel and like, share, and subscribe for more content. The discussions and stories shared on this podcast are for informational and motivational purposes only. This content is not a substitute for professional medical advice, addiction treatment, or therapy. If you or someone you know is struggling with addiction, please consult a licensed physician, addiction specialist, or mental health professional. You are no longer alone.